Welcome to APA Scope. I'm Juliette Wolf-Robin, National Executive Director of American Photographic Artists. APA is a not-for-profit trade association of professional photographers. Our mission is to help photographers succeed, and we do that through education, advocacy, and community. APA Scope is a monthly conversation focused on diversity and inclusion for our industry. Today's conversation is moderated by two photographers based in San Francisco, Ken Clickinger and Edwin Vargas, with our focus this month on the LGBTQIA community. Ken and Edwin are both part of the APA Advocacy Committee, and Ken also serves on the APA San Francisco Board of Directors. During the panel discussion today, the speakers will be the only ones recorded and it will be posted on our YouTube channel later. At the end, we'll change the format to an open discussion and Q&A. And obviously, you have to be here to attend that part of it. But if you want to actually see or watch that later, it'll only be available to APA members with a passcode. So be sure to sign up for APA news and future webinars on apanational.org website. And I will pass it to Ken and Edwin.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're very excited to have you all joining this second scope. This is a new monthly series that is as a result of the Diversity Committee, where we are trying to create topics to talk about diversity and inclusion. Just a quick reminder for everyone, none of us are diversity and inclusion professionals. We are members of the community just like you, and we're trying to do our best to talk about these topics. To celebrate diversity in all of these forms. Today, we're focusing on LGBTQIA on all teams, and this is gonna be our main topic today. While I'm sure we'll barely talk a little bit about it, we're gonna try our best. There is so many topics to talk, but we're gonna try to start this new conversation, and this is very excited because this is our first about this topic. So, before further ahead, I want to introduce you all to a wonderful, fascinating panel of humans that are here with us. And Ken will start with the first.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I would love to introduce Ash Danielson, first of all. Ash is a transmasculine conceptual studio photographer who enjoys capturing members of the LGBTQIA+ community in all of their splendor. Juxtaposing acid trip colors with melancholic characters, he draws a surreal picture of what it means to be alive in this day and age. He lives and works in Los Angeles. Next up, Mariya Stangl. Mariya is a contemporary commercial image designer who pushes the non-traditional. Her expressive style is showcased by strength and softness, mood, vibrant color, and attitude from her diverse models. She uses stylistic narrative to comment on contemporary gender roles, social justice, racial equality, and redefining beauty standards. Welcome, Ash and Mariya. Thanks for being here.
Well, now I would like to introduce to Nowen Cifuentes. Nowen is a first-generation Colombian French photographer and director, born and raised in the desert of Southern California. She now resides and works in Los Angeles as a mixed-race queer woman. Her identity plays as an active role in the type of narratives she's drawn to. Exploring portraiture within the landscape of American culture, Nowen's photographs deal with vulnerability and gaze between both subject and viewer. Nowen is also passionate about service within the photography community. She helps freelance creatives learn financial management and wealth building. Now, let me introduce you to Akshay Bardock. Akshay Bhardwaj was born in New Delhi, India, growing up gay in the midst of urban chaos. Hot pot of different cultures and politics has given him a unique perspective on human psychology. This ideology can be sensed in his work, where the viewer is intrigued by the plasticity of harmonic chaos, which is stylistically expressed through clashing colors that emote the feeling of claustrophobia within the image. His photograph has been featured numerous times in both Italy, Elle Magazine USA, and Elle Magazine India. So welcome to Nowen and Akshit. So happy to have you all here.
All right. Well, we know that we're never going to cover everything in an hour. We probably have less than an hour, realistically. But our goal in this conversation is just to provide a little bit of information, to have some dialogue, and to ask some probing questions of our panelists to share their experiences and give you some real world practical ideas that you can take back to your productions, your sets, your personal lives to practice being more inclusive. After all, that's kind of what we're all here for. It's certainly not easy to change the deep-rooted societal norms that we experience in this country especially, but certainly all over the place. And we hope that this can just help open up the conversation and keep it going. So with all of that said, let's dive in and put these folks on the spot a little bit. Many folks assume that coming out of the closet, if you will, is a one-time thing, that the socio-political climate and acceptance levels these days are so positive that queerphobia, transphobia, discrimination are mostly non-issues. And in large part, that is improving. But for as much progress as we may have made in recent years, heteronormativity, or the idea that everyone is straight and binary by default, is still ingrained in our culture, very much so. And being inclusive of other orientations and identities requires a normalizing of inclusive language. So what I'd like to ask is for our panelists to briefly describe what their original coming out process was like and how often they still continuously come out on a daily basis, even as a result of responding to these ingrained societal norms like heteronormativity. Anybody want to take that one first?
Well, I could speak on that because this is something I feel like I deal with definitely daily. I'm bisexual and I'm engaged to a cis hetero man. So everyone assumes that I'm straight. And when I first came out, I came out to my mom when I was like 13 years old. And she's a wonderful, very supporting woman, but she just did not understand like sexuality, or especially not bisexuality at the time. So she did not believe me. And she was like, she told me every girl goes through this, it's a phase, you'll get over it. And so I spent most of my teenage and young adult life wondering if that was true, and just going through all these different phases in my life where I'm like, well, I think I'm straight. No, I think I'm a lesbian. No, I think I'm bi. No, and just like constantly questioning my sexuality and like even questioning my feelings towards other people. Like, is this real? Like, you know, do other, like, how do other straight people, gay people, how do they feel? Am I like them? And am I this other? So just constantly questioning. And it wasn't until really just a few years ago that like I kind of came out again, and I actually came out to my partner who I'm engaged to now, and really like kind of grounded myself as being bisexual. Even though outwardly I don't present that way or seem that way, I feel like I'm finally comfortable in saying that. But it's definitely this thing that I feel like I'm constantly coming out all the time. And when I'm even in other queer spaces, if I'm there with my partner, I'm like, oh, they don't even know that I'm like a part of that community too, you know? So it's definitely just kind of this like constant struggle. And I do wish that people didn't just assume that like straight is the norm, you know, that just like straight is kind of the baseline thing. And I feel like even though things are becoming more open and, you know, people or there's a lot more queer people that are out in the world, it still does feel like it's like we're in a pretty heteronormative world. So I think there's still a lot more conversations like these panels and stuff are really helpful, but I think we still have some way to go.
I wanted to add to like some of the binary thinking like within the queer community, like to kind of piggyback on what Nolan was saying, like I saw it and thought about for myself a lot, like if I ever did eventually have like a cisgendered male partner, how there would be so much like backlash from the community that I was in, and just that it shouldn't be like that. Like the whole point ideologically of like being queer is that we like can do whatever we want and love whoever we want, and you know, feel like I love that community so much and it's so supportive and like beautiful in so many ways. But I have thought about that where it's like, oh man, that would be a really tough place to navigate through if, you know, if that happened, and there would be a lot of like damage made to friendships and relationships and like community, like social capital, you know, which like it feels ridiculous.
I'm gonna piggyback on that.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the most interesting things about the queer community that I have experienced is this like aggressive gatekeeping. And it actually has caused me to really recede from the community as a whole. I mean, I still work with them in the industry, and that is mostly where I get access to the community. But other than that, on a pretty social level, it got to be too much for me because I've come out multiple times as multiple things. And now even at this point, I don't even really know how I identify. I think everyone's hot. So I'm probably on the same page as Nolan. But yeah, I think that that's something that we can definitely talk more about and take away from this, is that like everyone is going through their own experience and it takes their own amount of time, and we don't need to judge each other based on whether or not they want to sleep with a cis male at any point. They can't be ousted from the community because of that. So
Yeah, exactly. Like the word queer is supposed to be a movement away from like binary language and things that are limiting, but then it's like still we have this like, okay, but what kind of queer are you? Like, are you mostly a lesbian? Are you like mostly gay? Like, I mean, being bisexual even now still has like a lot of negative associations, or like, you know, there's still a lot of work to be done there.
With me, I think it was a completely different thing, especially growing up in India. So I grew up thinking that there was something like different about me and I didn't know how to address it, especially when I was young. I literally came out to my parents like last year. And it was a completely different experience because I think in India, or at least where like my parents were like, it's fine, it's your choice, and we're fine with it, but let's not tell anybody else about it. Let's keep it hush hush. We want you to be successful first and then speak about your sexuality. So it puts you in a weird mindset where, you know, like your parents itself or like people that you grew up with are already telling you these are the boundaries and this is what you can and cannot speak to other people. And with time, I realized literally like the more I start speaking up about it, the more I speak about it, it is almost like cathartic for me because then I get to explore all of those things in my art. So it's been like a weird journey, especially like as somebody who's not from here.
Yeah, yeah. Wow.
So much. There's so much in there. I think we could spend the next hour talking about just these responses.
Yeah, I know.
But
I was like, we didn't even really answer the question.
yeah,
and that's okay. That's all right. But I felt like I wanted to throw out just a couple of vocabulary words for people because I feel like one of the big concepts we just touched on is compulsory heterosexuality. If you're not familiar with the term, look it up. It's pretty fascinating stuff. And the other one that we really just touched on is internalized homophobia, and what that does to us as individuals, what it does to our identities, especially as we grow up in these kind of tumultuous situations. Anyways, I'm going to shut up and give it to Edwin.
I do want to share some of my own experience. When I was growing up, I was this little kid, very feminine that everybody used to pick on in school and like make fun of it. Until like I got into high school and I was decided, okay, let me just get rid of all those stigmas because I don't want to keep always living like that. And then I just make myself like very strong in my mind saying like, okay, and I keep always saying these questions in my whole life. I was like, I promised myself after all the damage that I suffered as a kid, I will never be the person to apologize or tell anyone I'm so sorry, or I apologize my mom for being gay. And I promise myself to never ever say that to anyone. And I say to myself, the day I am decided that I find the person that I love, I will just bring him home and introduce him as my boyfriend. That's it. Because I always ask myself this question: why my sister never came out to me and told me like, Edwin, I'm so sorry, I'm straight. Why do I have to do it to her? I always put that question in my brain and I planned it very clearly because I was like, I am normal and I've done anything wrong. I born this way. I have never did anything illegal. Why do I have to apologize? I never lied to anyone. I never pretend that I had a girlfriend. I was just being me. So that really helped me to be strong because I knew I had a lot of traumas from the past. And then the day that I decided to bring my boyfriend home, it was like a big surprise. Everybody happened to be very accepting. And like, I just, till the day of today, I never had to apologize for being gay. And I just want to like kind of like share that because I want people to like take that home. Like, never apologize, never go to your mom and cry. They are the ones that need to apologize for never catch on before and and accept you for when they already knew who you were. So it's just like something I want to like everyone to like always remember because we have done anything, absolutely nothing wrong. We are just who we are, and that's the cool thing of us. So yeah.
Edwin, you want to move on to question 2?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is a very interesting question because explores intersectionality and it talks about like all of us that have come from different cultures and migrated to this country. The question says like, for those of you who also identify with an ethnic group or as a person of color, can you share an experience where perhaps your family and queer cultures have collided or when your intersectionality create a difficult social obstacle? Um, I just want to talk a little bit about this because I've been living in 3 different countries. When I moved from Costa Rica, I lived in Panama, which was a very straight, kind of like homophobic type of country. And I suffered many aggressions. When I first started my career, I started as modeling for a modeling local agency. And I remember this time that I got hired for a job with this female woman, and I was just trying, in the coffee breaks, talking to the assistant, be myself. Later on, I got to the agency, and it happened the booker be my friend. Let me know, like, hey, Edwin, just want to like share this in person because I like you and you're my friend. The client complained, and they said to never send um, feminine model to do a job with a female. And that always resonated in my brain. Like, how is it possible when I got so professional? The client was very happy with the final work, and I got rejected by the photographer just because I was feminine in my own breaks when I was having a coffee, and I was just who I am. And and then you realize that there is moments where within the industry where people don't accept you for who you are. Later on, I moved to Mexico, and I have many clashes with fathers or members of the family of friends that were very religious, and they wouldn't like when I would come visit my friends and I was being myself. They were like, oh, I don't want you to bring that queer guy to the house again. And later on, I moved to the US, and then I come to San Francisco, that is such an open-minded city, and I just feel welcome everywhere. I saw flags everywhere. I just feel like, okay, I feel like I finally come to a place where people had evolved a little bit more. And it was just like a very like disintoxicating world to be part of a community where people have evolved in their mentality. Not talking wrong about Latinx community, but like I felt like we close ourselves in the Latin community, believing in religion, believing in what other think, and then worrying so much about like what is what is your aunt gonna say, what is the other person is gonna say. And I think United States has a step forward in that. Not in every single city, but at least in the major cities, you see a little bit more of that. And I really appreciate that from the US. And I feel like, it has been like a very big progression from coming from different Latin countries where like the the stigma is there, and like people still feel they get criminalized for who they are. And like sometimes there was moment where like I came back to do another modeling job and I had to pretend to act, and I just remind myself to like say, just put your hands down. That's your biggest thing. Like just keep your hands down and like try not to move too much your head. And I was like, why? This is who I am. And if you don't want to accept me for who I am, then don't work with me, don't hire me anymore. But I feel like that's one of the things we always have to be very proud of, that because that's how we're gonna finally change people mentality. And it's like we're all the way that we are, and like, or you take me for who I am, or then just follow with the next one. But it is hard. It has been like a very long trajectory to make it better and better. But I'm happy and glad living in this city, how welcome it is. And I don't know, I just want to pass it to Akshay to see if you want to share something from your own
I vividly the first time like I came to US, because growing up in India, we don't have like gay club cultures. So we don't have gay clubs at all. We would sometimes have gay parties once a month kind of thing. And every time the cops would come, shut the parties, regular parties, which by the way would only go on till like 1 o'clock at night. Uh, and then like moving to San Francisco and like literally coming there and like going to just a gay bar and knowing that I don't know anybody there. I don't have like no ties. Nobody's gonna judge me, and it was so freeing. Just like knowing and like the simplest little things like walking on that path and like seeing the gay flag right on the footpath at Castro. Small little things like I had never thought of, like I wanted to move from India just because I wanted to be in a place where I could not be bullied, not be looked down upon, or not be judged for being from my life choices. Like, to be honest, like us moving here had a lot to do with us being gay, even in India, like me and my partner. So we used to live together in India, and then the landlords, back then it was illegal in India to be gay, and then the landlords called cops on us, and then we literally had to like pay the cop, because India, it's awesome, you get to, it's corrupt, so you get to pay the cops money and get away with shit. So we paid the cops a lot of money, and then we went back to our houses. We had already applied to this to Academy of Art, so I moved directly from India to San Francisco. But the whole experience, and then finally being there, and it was extremely free, knowing I can do whatever I want, I will not be judged. And that's when I started like seeing how what Mariya and like everybody else was talking about, like like the judgment within the queer community. Because in India, you all always judged, no matter what, like no matter you're gay, straight, like you're just judged just by the population, because the competition is so stiff. And like being like gay or being homosexual, I think they judge you even more. Like just what you said, Edwin, like like thinking the hand thing, you can see like my hands moving, like the small little things. They will like pick out a thing and then start picking on you and like bully you till like there is no end, and you start thinking that you have to fix something within you. So when I first came to US, I was like, now I get to do whatever I want, move my hands as much as I like, however I want to, and I don't care.
Yeah, I love that. I just had so many stories. I just want to share last one. I remember one time I worked with this designer, and he got to tell me like, hey, I want you to work with me, but before you work with me, there are a few things I need to change on you. And he told me like, your tone, your voice tone needs to change. You need to speak this way. And I was like, F you, like you will never be in my life. And I just had those memories, like how people dare to tell you things like that. But it is very nice to like, not worry about anything, just be you. It's like let it go. And then it just help you more because then you get to like get more things done because you don't have to think. You just let it go, which is cool.
And I think that is one of the reasons why I think like it is so great being like, like just being here, because we have so much diversity here and we get to work with so many people. And through our art, because artwork is very like photo based. So it's literally a moment in time. a good picture is a good picture, and we get to change people's perspective with just, like having different people within our photographs.
Yeah, this is definitely like a struggle that not many of you have had it to live. But I do feel like there are some states within the United States where it's kind of like similar coming pretty much from another country because they get so close in their beliefs. And I do believe that there are people that not just for like Akshit of art that come from another country, just coming from small states, they have some similar, um, life experience too. So I do want to like, hope this helps people feel like, we have all struggle.
Well,
I have something to say, but it's not really, it's not, I can't like answer the original question, but I was just thinking like, and it's so great to hear that the US is so like liberating for people from other countries, but that it's still such an issue here. And like even living in San Francisco for me, like I was harassed in the Castro. I've been like yelled, like derogatory things from car windows and things like that. So there's a lot, it's like heartwarming to hear stories, but there's like, I still feel like we all probably come out at least once a day in different ways, or even like explicitly like that. And to like bring it back to work, like showing up on certain sets. And like, for me, it shows up in like how I present, like what I dress like, oh, should I like not wear this? It looks too gay kind of thing. Cause I'm like gonna work with a bunch of other like, straight white women. And I don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable. Like that kind of thing is like a whole other scenario that we all have to deal with, I'm sure.
yeah, well,
Definitely a lot of thought. But yeah, that's like a question later, right? I feel like
yeah, actually, that's a perfect segue into the next question because
You're welcome.
Thank you. Always looking out, Mariya. Thanks. That's exactly right. I was thinking the exact same thing. It's really easy for us, especially sitting here in San Francisco, to feel so fortunate about how free and open everything is. And again, it is for the most part, but some really fascinating stuff still happens, especially showing up at work. And I think we probably have all experienced many times those kind of situations where you feel uncomfortable in your own skin. You know that you're in mixed company or you're among company who is not the same as you. We just kind of always have that identity of being the different one in the room. And I'm curious to hear your perspectives about what that kind of charade is like for you, especially in the context of work. How often do you feel like you're code switching or keeping up appearances just, to fit in or hide who you are? And if you're not doing that now, maybe a time in the past or something like that.
So I'm also of mixed race. My father is Colombian. He's indigenous, Black, and Spanish. And then my mom's white. She's from France. And so I feel like my sexuality and like my race have always been sort of like I'm trying to prove both of them all the time. And one of my big fears is like going on a job with all white straight women. That's like one place, because I feel like if I'm like with queer people and they might not realize I'm queer yet, like I feel very comfortable, just sharing that. And mostly I'm always accepted, and amongst other people of color, I feel very, amongst them accepted. But I don't know, there's something about straight white women that is very like intimidating, or I don't know. It's like, yeah, it's that thing where it's like suddenly I feel like if I'm found out, they'll be uncomfortable. And I can't really change the way I look, but I definitely can pass as straight if I need to. And it feels bad. It feels like, especially that it's been, my sexuality has been such a thing I've been like It's such a part of me that I've been dealing with since I was a kid, and it feels like, especially in the last like 5 years or so, I've really like accepted and stepped inside of myself as a bisexual person. So it really feels like hard and shameful to have to sort of code switch and like pretend, like, not that I'm pretending I'm straight, I just don't ever mention anything about being queer, you know, and like maybe mention like that my partner is a guy more times than I need to. But it's like a protection, because it just feels like if I'm found out, you know, this shoot, like if it's a photo shoot situation, like this might not go as well. Like I might not connect with this person. They might see me as strange, or yeah, just, and maybe that's something that I've created in my head, but it's also just because of past experiences that I've had with women, even when I was younger, who did reject me because I was queer, because I wasn't a white person. So I think those experiences have just really like ingrained in me, and now it's, you know, comes up, and it's something I would like to work on to like not have to worry about that and just be my full self. But it's definitely like sort of this wall of protection that comes up around me in those situations.
I think it's
Yeah,
so
for
interesting.
sure. Oh, go for it. Sorry, Ash.
Oh, just to think of the contrast of someone who is visible and who isn't. And I know that so much that like bi and femme erasure are such things in the community, and also just like in general, that they're way less acknowledged. And I've heard of so many people talking about, or people who are female who feel like they need to be more butch in order to be out more obviously, and maybe they don't even feel that way. And it's like, man, you kind of just get screwed no matter how you're presenting. Honestly, it's just so difficult no matter what, because as Ken said, it's just that feeling of being the different person in the room. And whether you're feeling that internally, externally, and people are noticing or not, it's just difficult to be that person. And you know, they kind of look, they kind of wonder, maybe they'll ask you a few more questions than other people, and you're kind of on to them, and it's like, I'm just here to work. Can we stop? But yeah, for me, I've been able to really overcome a lot of the dysphoria that I feel on set by wearing a binder and wearing all black. And somehow that has helped me really get through a lot of jobs. Whereas before, I really hate wearing compression on my chest. I hate wearing it anywhere. I hate clothes. Like I, you know, I don't like having pressure on my body, but I just kind of caved and gave into it, because before that, I would just get misgendered so much more often. And then at that point, people just kind of like get really uncomfortable and then overcorrective, and it just adds tension onto the set that doesn't need to be there. So to anyone who's listening, I think something that's really helpful for people who may look different than their pronouns is just to talk to your coworkers ahead of time. And there's so much conversation that goes on in email before a shoot happens, and just, you know, throw someone's pronouns in there and find out ahead of time, like do a little bit of research, and don't ever assume, basically, because you never know.
Or even like people, like, because I see this a lot on sets, like sometimes, like, you know, like, so I recently had a makeup artist, and they were trans. So I asked them before we started, like, hi, I would like to ask each one of us on the set, how would you like to be addressed? There is nothing wrong with asking, you
No,
know, like just being respectful, just being like conscious of other people in the room.
it's just so much easier that way. Then you know. Then you don't have to guess, and then you don't mess up. And even if you do mess up, it's okay. You just keep going. You know, it's just the backpedaling that feels really nerve-wracking for the person that you're talking to as well. You got to take their feelings into account. So yeah, that was the right thing to do. You just ask.
Yeah, and especially like I like to do it right in the beginning of the shoot, because that can almost be like, you know, like freeing. Like, let's all be us. Let's all just say what we want, and let's all just go from here, because we're about to create magic together. So we don't need to have any like ill, like, you know, feelings about each other.
Totally.
Kind of just like asking someone's name. Like you ask everyone's name, ask, you know, just add the pronouns too.
That's actually a really good practice. Like if we're the, you know, the lead photographer, and just kind of making that part of the like opening spiel, you know, just really like normalizing that. I could definitely do better on that. It's easy. I feel like I do it better like one-on-one if I just have like a small team, but you know, when you have like a whole set, I think it's nice to like take initiative and directive that way. And that's something that we can really easily do.
Yeah, I definitely think for people who aren't particularly struggling with their own pronouns, if they could just open that door for the person who might be, it's like, it's still hard for me to this day to bring it up. And even when people mess my pronouns up, I'll sometimes interrupt them so they don't have time to feel shame about it. So that it's like, I just don't want to hear it, you know? And people ask me, why don't you correct people more often? It's like, I just get nervous. So yeah.
It's tiring, I'm sure. It's like exhausting. And I will say, like, on set one time working for somebody else, another queer person like used they them pronouns for me because they weren't sure, and it felt like respectful and it felt like really nice. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I like really identify that way, but it felt nice. It felt respectful. It felt like, oh, we haven't had the conversation. I'm going to use like gender neutral language, just because I don't know yet, and we haven't like had that. And I think that's a good alternative if that doesn't happen.
I think so too.
Yeah, and I just encourage everyone to never feel afraid to ask, because this is the part of the change. Because sometimes people tell me like, well, but I don't know what to do. I don't know if I should approach that question. I don't want to offend anyone. Believe me, no one will get offended if you come in a nice way. If you care, you go out and ask that person with love, because you care about that person. You want the person to feel included. So go and ask in a nice way, and I'm sure that person will respond to you like, oh yeah, I can stay, or like, oh, no, it's okay, you can go as him or she. But I feel like, never feel afraid to ask, because that's what's gonna make that break that ice. And sometimes, like Ash said, like I feel nervous, so breaking the ice and go and ask, then it will make that ice to break, and it will just make that energy to keep flowing. And that's so important, to never feel afraid to ask someone, especially in this case. We're all learning, and it's part of this change we're all living in. And it's not easy, but like, making the initiative is what it makes the difference. So.
And also maybe just when you introduce yourself, just like for me, like, hi, I'm Nowen, she, her, what are your pronouns? What's your name? What are your pronouns? Like just adding it into you when you're introducing yourself. So it just makes it like part of the language.
Yeah, wonderful thing. Oh, go ahead.
And doing it like every time, whether you're like pretty sure somebody is like cisgendered, like I know I can own that in myself, like that I assume somebody's pronouns if they like don't appear to be like trans, but I think it's just a good practice to do it for everybody, really normalize that.
Mm-hmm. I'm working on a series of videos where I'm trying to like create these kind of like learn to unlearn type of chapters, and to share with all the students and community, just to like, tell people like, like add it to your signature on your email. It's so easy. Like we have it all here in our Zoom. And then it just start making it more common to everyone to see it everywhere. And then, little by little, it will become a habit where everyone will get used to put their pronouns in their signature, in their Zoom room. So it's a good start for everyone.
Well, I think we kind of covered the next question in that.
I know. I guess that's a sign of a good question, right? If we just naturally kind of introduce the next topic. Good job.
But that does kind of lead in. I don't want to step on toes here, but we kind of since we kind of answered that one, pronouns are normalizing pronouns, I think, is a great step, and we can take it a step further to not assume someone's partner status. I think Nolan's story was a particularly good example. I myself am uncomfortable when meeting someone the first time and they're like, well, are you married? And even though marriage equality is a thing now, there's just like this automatic assumption that I'm married to a woman. And then all of a sudden I have to come out to this person. And it's like, well, you just created a thing by assuming that I'm a heterosexual and married to a woman.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I was gonna say that too, like, especially on set, like I feel like we probably all get this question, maybe in some variation, but like the question of like, so do you have like a boyfriend ? Or girlfriend? Like, like just really trying to like sneakily like I mean, I think it is mostly like very innocent, and I think it's like the way that people know how to ask that question. But yeah, it's like then you're kind of forced to be like, nope, I don't have a boyfriend. And then yeah, I mean, to like kind of piggyback on the previous question too, like coming out on set sometimes, because I work a lot with like cis straight like female models, and you know, I feel like I don't know, I think it might be my own internalized thing, but like that I'm looked at different, or there's like this perception of like, oh, or I feel like, oh, I should be careful not to like watch her change, or like, you know, be risk, you know, like, I don't know, I feel like they're knowing that information, it's kind of like there's some kind of like perversion like in, you know, like internalized homophobia.
Exactly what you said. Like I like face the same thing, and I do the
Right?
exact opposite. I enter the set and I let everybody know that I'm like gay.
Yeah.
And because I work with girls a lot, and like because I work with like sometimes a lot of times I'm doing tests and stuff, and there are usually underage girls, so you want to make them. And I don't know why I do this, but this is my like security blanket of like as soon as they enter in, I let them know. Like I asked, like, what's your pronouns? What's your name? Hi, my name is Akshay. I use he, and then I tell them that like I'm actually gay, just so that they. I don't know why I do this. It's a weird habit. I like, but you brought it up, and I thought of like actually I do it all the time. It's almost
Yeah.
a
When in reality there's so much like sexual inappropriateness mostly between like a male photographer and a female model. Like why do I feel like I'm the one that's like perverted if I like, you know, I'm helping them get changed or something, you know, like that's part of it.
So what do you all have some suggestions? I mean, how do people interact and make small talk in an inclusive way?
Well, I think it's back to that conversation of like the assumption that everyone's straight. What was the word that you used? I didn't look. Compulsory.
Compulsory heterosexuality
There
is
we go.
fascinating.
But yeah, it's just like I think that I think it's just important to like start opening up that idea that like I mean, I think there's a lot more queer people than we even imagine. I mean, even when I came out to my parents, I came out to my mom again in my adulthood, and she was like, well, I actually was in love with a woman when I was younger. Am I bi? I was like, I mean, you're probably queer. And then when I told my father that I came out to him too, he said, well, when I was 9 years old, I had an experience with a young boy. And I was like, well, you're probably queer too. Like, I bet you there's just some, like, I feel like queerness is actually way more normal or just way more common than heterosexuality, but we just really want to hide it and don't want to admit it. And I think that, you know, to have this small talk, to feel more comfortable in these spaces, it's just let's start accepting that being queer is actually way more part of the norm, is way more common. A lot more people have queer experiences. And when you have a queer experience, or when you have, you know, yeah, to not say that it's some phase or that it's like, oh, well, you're straight, but you just had this like little blip, you know, that doesn't count. It's like every, like sexuality is a spectrum, and it's a lot more complex than I think we make it out to be.
I think there's also a way to approach these kinds of conversations with a lot more kindness than I've experienced from people in the past. Like, I think there are some questions that have crossed some lines and caused me to kind of disconnect from myself. And I realized after, you know, how someone could have approached me instead. And, you know, just try to get to know the people around you as if they're people and remember that. And I can't believe I have to say that, but I do. And it really makes a difference when you can tell that someone's trying to get to know you because you're a person versus they're a little skeptical about your haircut or your voice or whatever the hell they're trying to gauge you for based on the 5 seconds that they've seen you. So yeah, for anyone who feels like they have a hard time being around trans people, I'll speak specifically to that. Like, I definitely feel like people either ask too personal of questions, or they avoid me entirely. And so I would really like a nice in between of just, let's talk over the food table, talk about the weather. Maybe I'll open up about what I'm into if I feel like it. You know what I mean? Like not trying to pull these kinds of answers to quench your own curiosity, but maybe making someone so comfortable that they actually want to share something about themselves with you.
And I also think that, like what Ken said, like how could we actually have these conversations, like how can we change, what suggestion do we give? I honestly think I suggest us not actually asking this question to people in general. Like asking somebody if you're single or not is a different thing altogether, not talking about that, but asking them, because I'll give you a different parallel, like something very similar. Nobody looks at a woman and goes up to her and says, "Where is your husband? You can't be alone. You can't be single." Or you know what I mean? Like assumption. So, and because we as society have learned over time that you can't do that, that is not appropriate. And we just have to translate that into the queer culture as well. And people have to get on board with it.
Yeah, I think it's time to kind of like let the history that keep following us in the back and write our new history now, because it's like we're living our world, and like we don't have to keep believing in the past of or the queer world. We're always like put it in the corner, treating so bad. Like now we're living in a whole new world. We're writing our new history, and it's time to like make it so common for everyone. We're like we don't have to come out of the closet anymore. We are all living in our own houses. Closets don't exist. They don't have doors.
I would love that if we just didn't have to come out anymore. If it's just like it's accepted that everyone is just somewhere on the spectrum and it's fine,
Yeah, stop coming out of the closet. Like, forget about that word. Like, we are in our own houses. It's like we supposed to be free like everybody else. So like, I just want everyone to kind of like live a new life. It's like, don't ever apologize for who you are ever again.
I really love what you said, Ash. I feel like I'm going to carry this with me forever now, is just like, please make me feel so comfortable that I will volunteer information to you.
Yeah.
And for me personally, it's if I'm just meeting you and you use the word partner to describe your own partner, I instantly will feel comfortable talking about my partner.
Mm-hmm.
I will volunteer that information because you have approached the conversation from a gender neutral standpoint. I think that's like a little kind of micro example of what you're talking about. And I love that to death.
I always say partner, so I sound more queer.
Yeah, whenever someone says partner, I think that they're queer. So, but it is a good practice. I do like that, Ken.
And with that said, I think the rest of the attendees here may not know this, but all of us panelists pretty much all know each other. So I think we could continue this conversation for hours if y'all want to hang out. But we do want to open up the room and have a little Q&A if people want to chime in with questions or perspectives or feedback or any of that stuff. I think this is a good time to do that so we don't go too long.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you everybody here for sharing your stories. It is part of being part of a community, is that we can hear stories from each other. So thank you. I will now switch off the spotlight and we will start the Q&A, and then everybody else who's here, if you would like to put yourself on video, you will have that opportunity to do that as well. We'll have next month, so every first Monday of each month will be another episode of APA Scope. So look on apanational.org to get the information.